Good morning, everyone, and welcome to How to Optimize Firefighter Training for your next ISO review. My name is Richard Miller. I am your IFC host today for this great webinar and presentation for the next hour. Before we begin, just a couple basic rules. Audio is being broadcast using voice over internet protocol technology through your computer speakers or headsets. Please make sure that your speakers or headsets are turned on with the volume is turned up. Audience microphones have been muted for the presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties, please contact IFC support at webinars@ifc.org or via the chat function, and we will do our best to resolve your problem. Today, we'll be utilizing the chat and question and answer piece and the handouts, which is on your participant toolbar. Please, use the public chat to let us know where you're at. For Q&A questions, please type them in and let us try to answer those. We'll be answering and fielding all of your questions at the end of today's presentation. And if you'd like to, you can send private chats between participants or to the presenters. Some upcoming events for IFC, June 8th through 11th, the International Hazardous Materials Response Teams Conference in Baltimore, Maryland. Lots of opportunities available there to share your experiences and learn from the best in the business. August 16th through 18th is Fire Rescue International. This year is the IFC's 150th anniversary, and we'll be in Kansas City, Missouri for a great experience. And then coming up in November is the Volunteer Combination Officers Section Symposium in the Sun in Clearwater, where all volunteer career type departments can share and learn some great experiences at that event. And we look forward to seeing you there. If you're interested to get more or register for these events, please visit ifc.org/events. Today's webinar is brought to us by our sponsors, Vector Solutions, in a partnership with the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And we're very thankful to have Vector on board doing that. Today, we have two great presenters and some support from ISO. Our lead presenter today is Michael Morash, manager of Versic ISO, and then Chief Tim Riley, the solutions engineer for Vector Solutions. This time, I'm going to turn it over to Mike and lead us through this afternoon's event. Mike, over to you.
Well, thank you, Chief, and welcome everybody. Thank you for attending today's session. So as we go through today's session, we're going to be discussing how to document and get the most out of your training when it comes to the sections within ISO. So when it comes to the ISO training, we're looking at the FSRS, which is your fire suppression rating schedule. And in section 580 is where we look at the various sections, and it breaks it down into several areas of which we go into and look at all the areas of different sections for the various points to gather the credit for the 9 points total when it comes out of the 50 points in the fire department itself. So part of the areas which we're going to be looking for really comes down to the way you document your training. It is very important on this piece here because documentation tells us how well each member is doing, how many hours a member does in a specific area of that training, what topic that member is doing, and what was that specific training in that topic that member did. So how well did you document that training for that person? Or how well did that person themselves document that training, and how well did they clarify that specific topic, and where does it specifically belong when it comes to ISO training? We're also going to discuss when it comes to the various pieces of facilities when we look at the training grounds, the burn building, and the training tower itself. We usually look at the construction of these props themselves, and we usually follow the guidelines of the General Criteria 1402 when we come to these locations. The most important piece we want to make sure that everybody is understanding when we look at the topics under the training section within the fire suppression rating schedule is that we're looking to make sure that everybody is receiving the credit for fire structure training. And that fire structure training should be for fire suppression activities. Our schedule is based upon fire structures, so we want to make sure that that is what we are capturing in these training subjects. So when we talk about the ISO training and the 9 points, we're going to be looking at, again, the facilities and how you utilize these facilities and these components of that facilities. We're going to look at the company training. We're going to look at your officer training. We're going to look at your driver and operator training programs. We're going to look at your new driver and operator training programs. We're going to look at your hazard material training. What are you doing in these programs here that you're documenting to make sure you ensure that credit? We're going to look at your recruit training program and how well you are making sure you recruit your train to maximize your points in these sections. We're going to be looking at your fire pre-plan inspection program. So when it comes to the facility training, we want to ensure that each member in your agency is obtaining the maximum hours they can get utilizing that facility. So when it comes to the facility, we are looking to ensure that you are utilizing the 3 components for this credit. The 3 components for this credit is the utilization of that live fire training structure, including the smoke room. We want to make sure that each person is utilizing a drill tower at least 3 stories in height. And we want to make sure that you are also using, and your members, they're using a training area for maximum credit at least 2 acres in size. We will prorate that training area if you are using 1 acre to give you a little less credit, but you are showing that you are at least training in a training facility. Again, we want to make sure that you use all 3 of these components, and that for full credit, each member should be getting 18 hours a year of structure fire training utilizing these pieces. If you are obtaining more than the 18 hours a year utilizing these 3 pieces, and it is structure fire related only, we then allow you to move this structure fire the structure fire credit from facility over into company training. But again, we want to make sure we are stressing that you are only moving those hours that are structure fire training, that are structure fire training only. So when it comes to live fire training structure, again, we want to make sure that you are utilizing this prop, you are documenting what you're doing utilizing this prop, how you utilize this prop. We want to make sure that you are doing a structure fire training inside the live fire training structure. We want to make sure that you are utilizing this drill tower. How do you use this drill tower? We want to make sure you are utilizing the training area. So when it comes to that training area, we look at a lot of different areas when it comes to this training area. Now, all 3 of these pieces that we'll look at do not have to be on the same location. We allow all 3 to be separate areas. So you can have an acreage that is owned by the city, the county, the fire protection jurisdiction itself. This acreage could have no structures on it at all. It could be 2 acres in size. And you are doing structure fire training on this acreage. As long as you're documenting structure fire training and those drills that you're doing on this acreage, you can get the facility training credit on these facility training grounds. But again, you have to make sure that you document this correctly. Same as a drill tower, same as a live fire training structure. So again, we want to make sure that we're stressing that everything you do at a facility, you are documenting that training correctly so that you can obtain the maximum training credit at a facility that we allow. When it comes to company training, what we are looking for is that each member is obtaining their 16 hours a month which really breaks down to 2 hours a day or 198 hours at the end of the year, 192 hours at the end of the year. So what we're looking for in company training is that each member, again, they're getting their structure fire training only in this section, and everything they do, they're labeling as company training. So this goes out to those members as they work as a group at the station, together as one. They're going through different drills. They're going through the familiarization of those tools on the apparatus, making sure they know how to utilize those tools on the apparatuses. They're going through ropes and knots. They're going through their ladders. They're going through various discussions on tabletop exercises, possibly. But everything they're doing as a team or possibly as an individual, maybe going through some sort of a computer-related course that relates to structure fire training. We want to make sure that you're capturing everything possible, but it has to be structure fire training related only. If it is not, we will not credit that. So we want to make sure, again, that we stress that it's structure fire related training. There's a lot of things out there that are structure fire training. Vector has a lot of different courses out there that they have on their sites that they utilize for this purpose. Again, as long as you are selecting the correct courses and you are documenting what you do with these courses, we are okay with accepting them and moving forward. When it comes to the officer training and certification program, so what we are looking for here in this section here is we are looking to see how many officers do you have within your agency, and are these officers certified according to the AHJ, meeting the general criteria of 1021. So what is your program from the AHJ that allows you to certify these people to meet that criteria? So you're able to show us this policy or this procedure, and you tell us how many of these folks they are, and we credit those people in that section. But on top of that, what we want to see are these officers, are they obtaining their 12 hours a year of continuing education? This is one of those sections in the schedule that we say does not have to be strictly structure fire training, because this is the development for a better officer. So how do you document this section here? So once you've gone through all your hours and what you've needed to do, you've attained your classes to become what you need to become for this section here and got all those hours, but you have those excess hours. How do you document your excess hours in this section here? If it is structure related and you have proper documentation to show it is structure related, you could then go ahead and move those hours to company training. If it is not structure related, those hours cannot get moved into company training. Again, a lot of this is going to come down to your documentation on how well you do with this stuff. We are very much available to answer a lot of these questions on site of the day of your visit, and we're available to answer a lot of these questions while we're not there for these visits. So at any time, you can really pick up a phone to any one of your ISO reps or anything, a manager that you may know, reach out. We'll answer these questions and help you document and show you what we would credit when it comes to these areas. It is your opportunity to obtain as many of these hours as you can, but you have to take advantage of asking these questions between us and Vector to ensure that you're capturing everything you capture. The new driver operator training program. So what we're looking for here is, what is your program within your department that certifies or gives your new driver or operator that certification that allows them to operate that vehicle? So our credit for maximum credit is 60 hours. So how do you show us what that program is? How do you show us? Is it a policy? Is it a Is it an outline? What is it that you're able to show us that your folks are doing, your firefighters are doing to obtain these hours? Once you have showed us your program for this section here, what we're going to look at next is the new driver operator training program, in which we say we're looking for 12 hours a year for those existing drivers. So what are your existing drivers who you said are certified? What are they doing on top of the facilities, on top of their company training to get these 12 hours a year? So there should be no double dipping when it comes to training hours. So if you do a facility drill and it consists of driving, but you're documenting those hours of facility, you should not be documenting them as existing driver hours. So all pools of hours are separate. So how do you document what were these hours that you did? Where were these hours performed that you did, that these people are doing to get these 12 hours a year in this section? Hazardous material training programs. So again, we are looking for 6 hours a year per member. We are looking to ensure that all your members that we are capturing in the suppression, that we are also capturing training, are receiving these 6 hours a year. This 6 hours is not basically for a hazmat team only. You cannot carry a specialized team hours into this section here for everybody else. We're expecting everybody to obtain their own 6 hours a year for hazmat training. So can you roll more hours that you obtain in hazmat to company? Possibly. Again, how do you document those excess hours, and how do you document them as structured fire training to bring them into company? Documentation, again, is very important because you want to maximize that credit. So you want to make sure that you can show that field rep when they come to the day of the visit that all those hours that you have captured, you're looking for that credit for it. So we want to make sure that you're capturing and documenting everything correctly as it relates to each topic and structured fire training. So when it comes to the recruit training program, so what we're looking for here is that your recruit training program is all your new employees that you hire within the first 12 months of employment, they are obtaining for maximum credit 240 hours. And that first 240 hours, that should obtain a live fire training burn. So how is this done? A lot of states have certifications which employees should be certified before they come to work for them, and a lot of states go ahead and they have their own program. So we're going to ask you, how does your recruit training program works? How does it lay out for us to look at it? And how do you capture these hours so that we can make sure we're capturing the correct credit in this section for these people? So again, a lot of this is going to boil down to documentation in the correct places. So when the field rep comes on the day of the visits, he or she knows where the correct hours will be placed in each section for each firefighter. We do not allow excess firefighters' hours to be carried to another firefighter. Every firefighter must obtain their own hours in each of these areas to get the maximum credit in each of these sections. Building familiarization pre-incident planning program. So what we're looking for here is we are looking for that each commercial property receives a yearly update to the pre-plan. So this yearly update to this pre-plan should include a sketch of the building. It should include the high hazards of the building. It should include layouts of the building of any notations that the firefighters should be aware of possible hydrant locations, standpipe locations. It should also include records of incidents in the past, possibly, but you should be following the NFPA guidelines of 1620 as it was laid out for you. Again, we are looking for all commercial properties within your fire protection program to receive a yearly update to that pre-incident plan. So what is a commercial property? It is not a residential single-family home. It could possibly be the church. It could be the fire station. So be very careful when we come in, because we are going to be pulling buildings randomly to ensure that this is being done so that we can ensure the correct credit is issued for this program. Tim?
Thank you, Mike. That was a great presentation. And I'm going to continue on. Again, my name is Tim Riley. I'm a retired training chief from Dunedin, Florida. And I'm going to go over how Vector Solutions can help you track your ISO training hours and be prepared for that. I'd like to thank ISO for joining me today. Mike and I have worked together for quite a few years, and it's been a pleasure. And, it really has become a kinder, gentler ISO when it comes to an audit. But as Mike said, the ISO requirements, in accordance with the general criteria of NFPA 1001 for company training, 1021 for your officer training, 1002 for driver, 472 for hazmat. And remember, it's hazmat, structural firefighter related training, which is awareness operations level over. It's not hazmat technician training. And then facilities, which is one of the big ones where people struggle. And, if you go down to the drill grounds and you just sit in a classroom, then, it's not facilities training. You actually have to use the facility to get the credit. And it's very important that you do that. We talked about, the rollovers, and this is an illustration of how the ISO training tracker works. But again, realize that it's not automatic. It's up to you to make sure that everything that if you're going to use these rollovers, you have to make sure that everything you're using is structural firefighter related, or else it can't roll over. It would have to stay in the bucket where it belongs, and you can't pick and choose what rolls over. So be very diligent and make sure that every training is going into only one of these 4 buckets or directly into the company training. And if you're using this, all of the training has to be structural firefighter related training. There's a lot of training we have to do as a fire department, like sexual harassment training, bloodborne pathogens, and things like that. But it's not structural firefighter related. So in the case of the officer, as he spoke, they have to get 12 hours before anything's going to roll over. Yeah, or not roll over, but flow down. Same thing, facilities, it's 18 hours. Hazmat, it's 6. And your officers can get driver training as long as it's structural firefighter related driver training. When you go to a driver, the same buckets, the same training. It's just that now they have to maintain and get that 12 hours a year of driver training, but they're going to be prepared to become officers. And as part of their officer training, there's a lot of structural firefighter related officer training that they can get, in which case that can actually be documented as company training. Now, you heard Mike say many times, in the case of the firefighter, it's the same buckets, same training. He said many times it's all about the documentation. And in saying so, I will tell you, this is exactly what they're looking for. They want to know, what's the name of the activity that you did? What objectives did you meet? How long did you do it? Where did you do it? Who was the instructor? And at the same time, give me a little description of exactly what you did. So, we've made it easy for you we have the activities already built where you can pick what your primary topic is. You can give me a brief description so that when ISO comes in to question you on whether or not it's going to count or not, you can say, well, this is structural firefighter related training and this is why. And that's all they're looking for. It's very simple. Okay. Some of your daily training entries, things that do count and some that no longer do count, like physical fitness. Don't abuse this. they're going to allow you 20 minutes a day, which is roughly 40 hours over the course of the year. And I know most people work out for more than 20 minutes in a day, but take the 20 minutes and be very happy as long as they're working out. Don't be taking this if you're not doing it. And no, physical fitness on your days off doesn't count. Big one are the training activities of the day. And again, utilize the custom activities to actually document it in the fashion, providing with the details that they're looking for. Now, your SCBA checks, it no longer counts. There's been too much abuse and it had to be taken away. Now, in my world, I still want you to check that out, and I still want you to document that you checked it out because it is training. It's just that it's not going to count to ISO due to the extreme amount of abuse that we've seen with that. Same thing true with your daily apparatus checks. People were taking far too many hours, and honestly, these are the only things where people documenting, and they're not meeting the intent of what the training is. Additional trainings. You know, when you talk about things that you're going to do, Fire Officer 1 and 2 training, you know, you have those tabletop scenarios. You sit down and you have an officers meeting where you're talking about structural firefighter related topics. You're doing that area familiarization. You know, you've got some high hazard areas, limited access areas. Aren't you sharing that information? Aren't you preparing your people for when a structural fire may come in or another emergency? Drive on the road training. This is actual hands-on. Again, just because the person showed up to be the driver today, don't be giving them an hour's worth of driver training. Have a simple policy. In my world, at least once a month, I took you out and you actually performed the NFPA 1002 drive on the roadway activity, and you got a half an hour. That's still 6 hours in a month, 6 hours over the course of the year, and you haven't even put it in pump gear. And I want to see more than that for your driver training, just not driving on the road. Just remember, you don't get credit for training when you're doing your job. The weekly apparatus checks. Now, this is one where that still counts as long as it's a training thing. You know, if it's just the driver going out, checking out the apparatus on a weekly basis, that's not training. But if the driver and the rest of the crew and the whole crew is out there and you're going over all those tools and you're going over the location of the tools and how to run the tools and maintenance of tools and things like that, now you can get credit for it, because now it's a training evolution, but it's also limited to half an hour once a week. The big one is what I call lost training. This is training that you're doing every single day, but you're not capturing it. As I said before, you don't get credit for going here to this structure fire and putting the fire out, because that's doing your job and you're not training. But how about if you're having issues with the handling of the hose line, you know, where you have a pile of spaghetti at the back of the engine, aren't you going to address that as training later on? In which case, I'm not telling you to take credit for the training of putting the fire out. I want you to credit the training that you're going to do as a result of doing your job. Same thing. If you had an extrication or something along those lines where, you know, your probationary firefighter is struggling with the tools to make a purchase point, and grandma is sitting in the car, are you going to say, oh, it's okay, grandma, he's rookie, we'll have you out in a minute? No, you're going to grab the tool out of his hand and get grandma out of the car. But aren't you going to take the 5 or 10 or 15 minutes later on to turn around and say, hey, Proby, come here. Let me show you how to work the tool instead of the tool working you. Now you're training. And you're not getting credit for the extrication or the rescue or any of those other things. Now you're actually doing training, and that's what we're trying to capture. Fire departments, it's never been a problem with fire departments doing training. The problem's always been how they document it. You know, when you're setting up your ISO training trackers and your people in there, okay, remember that a person only needs to be in one, because ISO is going to look at you as either an officer, a driver, or a firefighter who wants to be one of those. And your community risk reduction is for your people inspectors. The only people that have to meet the ISO training requirements are going to be those who respond on first alarms. Typically, your fire chief, he'll go out to a fire. If it's a major incident, the fire chief will go out there after it's a fire. He doesn't go on the first alarm. Your inspector, he doesn't go on the first alarm. He goes after it's already been established as a fire. And so that's your determining point. And therefore, like your inspectors, your fire marshal, your training chief, and your ops chief and your chief, they don't have to meet these requirements, and they shouldn't be in your training trackers. The prevention people, they should be in the community risk reduction ones for those points. With community risk reduction, if you're a fire inspector, you have to get 24 hours of continuing education in a year. Okay. If you're a fire investigator, it's 40 hours of continuing education in a year. And if you're a fire life safety educator, it's 10 hours of continuing education. And the one key point here is there is no spillover or anything, but also anything that counts in one of these buckets can only count in that bucket. You can't get credit for doing a class and have it count towards your inspector, your life safety educator, and your fire investigator, which means and translates to the fact that if you are a person who is an investigator, an inspector, and a life safety education, then your total training for the year is going to have to be 74 hours in the course of the year. It's the total of all, because you have to get 10 hours separate, 24 hours separate, and 40 hours separate. Again, these are the people that are not responding on first alarm that are in your prevention bureau. And this is to get the extra 5.5 community risk reduction points. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator, and we'll open it up for questions.
Great presentation, everyone. Thank you very much for all that information. And as a former training officer and having been through the ISO review process, this is great information. I wish I had this years earlier. So a couple questions have come in that I think are interesting and kind of go hand in hand with how to count hours and such. One of the questions comes into us, and this may be state specific, but it looks at in Ohio, we have a 240-hour firefighter class. If we hire someone with 240-hour certificate, does that count as the 240 hours for a new recruit?
So I guess I'll take that one, Tim. So
Sure.
For the purpose of ISO, if they are already certified and they're coming to your agency, and then you are putting them through another recruit class, then you should be capturing those recruit hours and putting them in the proper categories for ISO. So you shouldn't be you shouldn't be doing a whole nother set of recruit program and just letting those hours sit if they've already been certified. They're going to be suppression people. We're going to expect those people to have those hours when we come in the door. So you should be capturing those hours correctly.
Right. You can only count the hours that are within your jurisdiction then, correct?
Well, if that firefighter had captured their recruit hours outside of their employment with that agency, so they were working for another agency and they got their certification, and they moved to another agency to go to work, that agency is accepting that certification, then that recruit hours are acceptable for ISO.
Excellent. So the next question tailors right into this. If a new employee is certified through the state of Florida, would we as the fire department need to document another 240 or can they start training under the same requirements as a 3-year employee? So like a continuation of training as I'm reading this question of, again, how do you document their Florida State Academy requirements and then move forward for the next year forward?
So the certification process is especially for like the state of Florida, is the department's already captured that hour because the state requires them to meet X amount of hours for certification purposes. So the certification's already been met. If the department's then putting them through an additional recruit class, those hours should be captured in the correct sections under the FSRS so that they can be applied if an ISO evaluation has to come in, they get the credit for those areas.
Excellent.
Whether it's facility, company, wherever it may be.
No, perfect sense. Great. So the next question is kind of goes back to the morning checkout and the SCBA question. And how best to document this. But this department added a morning checkout with actually having firefighters don PPE, don SCBA, don the mask with gloves on. Will that, if documented appropriately in the vector system, meet the ISO requirement?
As long as they're able to document and show that it is an actual drill or a training component, then we have no problems with it.
Great. And this maybe goes to Tim a little bit. So in my department that I retired from, we did something very similar on a monthly basis where we assessed the PPE. They went through donning and doffing their PPE. And once they put their mask on, we also utilized our regional Mayday requirements. So we made them recite the Mayday call, tell them what unit they were on, what position, and communicate over the radio. So you were able to, rehearse and practice the radio communication piece, properly answer the Mayday call. Would they be also allowed to include that?
And I'll actually add on to what Mike had said, is if you're doing what they're saying they're doing, instead of trying to document that as a daily, just utilize one of the more prevalent activities like either company training or the NFPA 1001 Chapter 5 Firefighter Personnel Protective Equipment, where you can include all the objectives that you met. And then you can put in the duration of the training, because now you're actually describing a training evolution. So I would recommend using that rather than trying to make the daily SCBA, which was narrowed down to just one objective in 15 minutes. So no, in both those scenarios that you've described, that is actual training, and it is structural firefighter related. And so they certainly can count that towards their company training.
Great. We've got a question in the chat that I want to bring up, which I think is really good about tracking training individuals, and especially with the varied number of participants we have from around the country. Can the Vector Solution program create custom training tracking for individual states based on those state requirements as well as the ISO? So kind of a two-prong approach. Am I able to document my ISO, but then can I also meet the state objectives, for that area?
Absolutely, you can do that, and actually, it doesn't have to be Vector to do that. Each individual department can modify their credentials as they desire, and in many states we have done that. Like you take a state like Illinois, which is it's important for them to capture ISO, but it's also important for them to capture OSHA, in which case OSHA doesn't necessarily concern so much about hours. They want to see completions of certain things, whereas ISO is concerned about hours. And you can actually make a combination credential that captures both. It captures the completion of those unit things like bloodborne pathogens and lockout, tag out, and things like that as completions based. And yet above, I'm capturing all the hours for ISO. As far as if those things that are like the SCBA drills and things like that, for OSHA, they just want to see, did you do emergency procedures? But if you're doing emergency procedures, that's training that those hours can actually count towards the ISO. So yes, each state can do that, and they don't need us to create that for them. They can actually modify it as they see fit themselves.
Excellent. So the next question, I guess there's a discussion on confirming the flashover simulator is no longer count as facility training, even if the burn box is located and accepted as an approved facility training. So again, this deals with a flashover training exercise on the training grounds. Is that acceptable to be counted?
If the flashover training is approved as a simulation that would take place of the burn building, then it's done at the facilities, then there should be no issue with that.
Great.
Any drills that you're doing at the facility grounds with an approved prop, you should be logging those hours as facilities.
Document.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The next question kind of goes to a different area and again falls into specialized training, but we're all doing this. And the state of Alabama has a rapid intervention crew member certification, which is 40 hours. How would we document this certification for ISO purposes, and what would count in that area?
Again, we are a structural fire schedule. So for the rapid intervention hours that they're doing, the full 40 hours, they're really going to have to start breaking these type of hours out into sections of where they're looking to credit for. Is it for companies or for offices? It's really going to be up to that agency to take the time to break those hours out and indicate how they place it in the proper sections.
Right, and within that drill, for example, we could break out SCBA usage or PPE usage, maybe specialized tools, whatever falls within the ISO classifications, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Great. The next question goes to driver training. So for existing driver training, is the 12 hours per year or per apparatus per year? So this kind of goes to documenting individual or apparatus piece, which is always a great question.
So we're just looking for the 12 hours a year total. So we're not looking per apparatus. So as long as you're getting your 12 hours a year of continuing education for that position of which you sit and you're documenting correctly, you're fine.
Right. So if I'm the engine operator, I need to make sure that I document the number of hours there. If I'm a ladder truck driver, tiller truck platform, you need to be able to document your position based on the 12-hour expectation.
Correct. Yep.
Great. Follow-up question as to this 120-hour question. If a member starts a 120-hour state class and we send them to an outside training program to upgrade to 240 certificate, does the 120 hours count towards ISO rating? So a member comes in, they have to send them out to a third party to get that additional certification. How do we document that, and what counts for my ISO rating?
Is it all part of the recruit training program? So is the first 120 hours part A of the recruit training program, and they're going outside to get the remaining hours they need, and it's all part of that one program? We're good with that. It all falls under recruit training at that point.
Great. Next question is there a correlation or overlap between documenting the daily training entries, training activities of the day, and facilities training for NFPA 1402 and the Chapter 11 requirements? So, how do I capture in some of those other pieces? Specifically, they're asking high angle and confined space. So again, maybe not structural fire related, but how best to, document those, and what overlaps?
Again, you're looking to make sure that you're capturing all your facility hours conducted at the facilities, and make sure you're utilizing all three pieces of those facilities: the training grounds, the two-rail tower, and the live fire structure with the smoke room. Once you've obtained those hours, and those are your 18 hours, whatever you're doing that's structure fire related after that, you can move to company training.
Great. So this goes to a question about basically sort of paid on call, part-time firefighters and such, or maybe a volunteer in a career scenario. When a firefighter works at more than one department, can hours of training provided by the second department also be used as credit hours of the training in their other home department?
So the answer would be yes, but there is a component of which they must meet first. So the component is that they must do 12 hours of training, structure fire training, with each agency they work for. Once they've met that 12-hour component, they can then carry the facility hours that they do over to those other agencies at full credit and company at half credit.
Excellent, excellent. That's a great answer to that question. Next one is officer training related to structural firefighting. How best do we overlap those into company training? Does a tracking system currently have a way to separate out the non-structural officer training to keep them from automatically spilling over into the company training? So, overlapping of duties with respect to officer documentation.
Actually, no, there's no way to, once you put things in the officer topic, it's set up to overflow. And that's why it's very important that you take the time to only put, if you're going to use the the overflow as we're speaking, then it has to be structural firefighter related training. All those other soft skills are very important, and you shouldn't, but they really shouldn't be counting towards company training, and therefore you really don't need to count them towards your officer training, because you're going to get enough officer training that is structural firefighter related training over the course of a year.
I think this next question goes right to that answer, Tim. That are all classes taken off duty acceptable by ISO for company training. So, example, I attend a strategy and tactics class at an accredited college or other facility. It's 45 hours. Can I log those hours in? And how best, should I be documenting those hours that I take? And, we're all taking those off facility, off site, training events. How best do we capture those?
As long as you're capturing it in the correct manner, which in this case here, if you go off to something like the State Fire College and you take strategy and tactics, that's obviously structural firefighter related training, and it would count. But you can't count that as facilities training because you're just sitting in a classroom. So don't capture it as facilities training, even though you're at a training facility. You would capture that as the officer training that it is, which is strategy and tactics, and it's a structural firefighter related. But again, it has to be that is the whole key, is everything must be structural firefighter related training to count towards ISO.
This is probably a spillover question, and it comes to us as from a fire marshal. I recently completed my 90-hour class for fire marshal training from the state. I plan to continue my training, though some of the classes related to the fire marshal role. Can I apply those additional training hours to my fire officer training requirement? So again, probably getting scene safety, scene documentation as the fire marshal, but then I met my bucket. How do I, can I document those for officer training then, for establishing a safe scene, or preserving the evidence, those kind of things? How can you overlap those and not, still get credit appropriately?
Well, first of all, if you're the fire marshal, then you're not responding on first alarm, so you don't have to worry about the 12 hours officer training. Instead, you need to focus on either your inspector, investigator, or life safety educator training. And so quite honestly, it's a moot point. You really shouldn't have to worry about it.
Right. And with all the difference between fire marshal and fire inspector and community risk reduction, they all have independent buckets, correct?
Very, very true.
Good.
Yeah, and as Tim stated, we are looking for those people when it comes to training that are part of the initial alarm assignment. So who are responding on that initial alarm assignment? That's who we're tracking.
Now, if that individual's a dual hat, or say they ride as a fire marshal, but I also ride in the station, say overtime as a company officer, then they need to document both, correct?
Yes.
Great.
And it needs to be separate, though.
Two categories, correct?
That's correct. They'd have to meet the officer tracker, but then on the side, they'd have to meet the fire inspector or fire investigator training requirements on the other side. So they'd be in two different credentials.
This is more of a software question, I think, but the question is, how does the pre-configured vector tags provide training apply to these different requirements? Are there preset tags in there that qualify into these different buckets?
As a general rule, when your site is initially set up and you get the activities that we've already built in the courses, and your client success manager puts the ISO on there, everything on your site that we've built and give to you to start with has one tag and one tag only, and that's very crucial. That way, when you go to put things in the topics accordingly, it only goes into one. If you have multiple tags on something, it's the equivalent of you're double dipping on the training, which is very much taboo. And so the stuff that you get from Vector that's pre-built, that I've built, or my fellow solutions engineers have built, or our courses, they've already been tagged. It's when you build your own stuff, that's when you have to be very diligent about ensuring that you're only going to count it as one, and you make those decisions. And if you have questions, you can reach out to your ISO representative to say, hey, I'm building this out. What's the best way for me to tag this? And they'll understand. They understand our system, and they understand that you're trying to get the biggest value for it. But it's where you have to be diligent. And this is why it's not automatic all the time. It's whatever you build, make sure it's one tag and one tag only. That way it doesn't inadvertently end up in 2 buckets and 3 buckets, and you're taking double, triple credit for the single training.
Excellent. So, for example, if I was a swift water technician, that's a separate tag, correct, and a different account.
Absolutely, that would be tagged as specialty training and would come nowhere near the ISO because it's not structural firefighter related training. So you can have, just like some of those other things that we have, like the bloodborne pathogens, that's tagged as EMS training, so that you can capture it and sort it out and run reports and things like that. But it's not going to have one of the ISO tags on it, which are company, officer, driver, hazmat, and facilities training.
Great. For ISO and for the tracking the system, if I'm a firefighter and I'm moving up the chain and I'm taking officer development class, how do I apply capture that training in my category?
So if you're a firefighter and you're not presently an officer and you're taking that officer development class, the question I would have is, one, is it structure related? Because that's what we're documenting for the company, structure related. 2, is a part of your program to become an officer, because that's that program. It's your development to become an officer to be able to test and take that seat. So it's really hours that you're getting to better yourself in that position.
Excellent, excellent.
You can look at those hours, possibly. It's a discussion that we have to have.
Yeah, so it's better to ask in advance to try to document it appropriately.
Yes.
Yeah. This is an ISO specific question, and we'll try to provide an answer to this participant about how do I find my ISO point of contact. They happen to be in Alexandria City, Alabama. So if somebody can reach out to them when we get done. And I think we've got a couple more questions here in the chat. So under this one here, assuming the number of training hours and certifications differ slightly for volunteers, mine is a volunteer department and I'm new to training manager. So I'm curious, what's the difference in this question? Is there a difference of hours counting between a volunteer or a career or paid part-time on-call type responder?
So the schedule has a maximum hours which we look for, but we are allowed proration on credits that you do not need. So if you only get 160 hours, then you're prorated based on those amount of hours for each member for those points.
Okay, I think we've answered that question. Let's see. So here's a question again on tactics. So I'm taking a tactics class and document 45 hours of officer training, and have I met the 12-hour requirement for officer training? And again, it's not specific. It doesn't say if it's offsite or onsite, but how best to document those officer training hours so that I ensure that I'm getting in the system correctly.
You would have a custom activity built for that, and specifically, and tag it as officer training. And I would build it specific as far as with the exact duration of the class and tag it as officer training. And again, as long as it's structural firefighter related, it's going to be fine.
Excellent, excellent. I think we're reaching sort of the end of our time slot today with everyone. I wanted to make everyone aware that's on the call today that there are handouts available that you can download while we're still live. The recording will be available after today's presentation that everyone can go to. And you'll be able to download the full PowerPoint and look at the recording. And then during the survey, we want to know how this event went today and how the platform worked for you to ensure that we're providing you with the best services. On behalf of the International Association of Fire Chiefs, I'd like to give our 2 presenters today a last word and thank them as our sponsor. So Tim, over to you first.
Well, thank you very much for having us. I've enjoyed the partnership, And I personally want to thank Mike for joining me on this webinar today. It's always a pleasure working with you, sir.
All right, I'll take the last word. Again, I want to thank you as well for allowing us to partnership and do this presentation. This information is always great information to make sure everybody gets, understands, and we're always available for those who want to reach out to us. And again, Tim, and on behalf of the IFC, it's always been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, Tim, Mike, and we look forward to continue partnership and relationship and providing great information to the fire service. This brings us to the conclusion of today's webinar presentation, and look to the IFC site for the next scheduled event. And I'm sure we'll be back again with Vector and ISO giving you more great information. Have a nice, safe day out there.